Hello there, everyone. How you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we're going into r/entitled people, where someone gets sued by an entitled business owner because they decided to open a liquor store. Apparently that broke the local monopoly that other guy had, and the entitled business owner wasn't too happy with it. Stick around for that story, and remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts below, and let's get started, shall we? For our first story we've got, entitled person wants me to move my car forward so he can illegally park. Backstory, I work at an apartment complex 3 days a week to meet with residents as a case manager. Because I'm there and have a lot of people living there, I have a key FOB but no parking space. In front of the building there are 4 marked spots, an area for people to be dropped off that's accessible, and 4 more spots, but they're blocked by construction stuff right now. Because I'm a case manager, my relationship with the landlord can be tense sometimes. So I always respect the property rules. We're an outside agency with a contract with the building. I work for other people, obviously. The rules are that you can't double park or park on the drop-off area, which are clearly marked with lines. So last week it was cold, and I was lucky enough to get a space right out front. It was the last one. I get out and I'm walking into the building when a guy comes up and honks. I turn around and he yells, "Pull your car up further and I can fit behind you." "Oh, that's not a spot, that's the drop-off area. It has lines." "Pull up! It's cold and I ain't walking that far. Don't be selfish." "It's against the rules. They can tow you for double parking." "They don't ever tow you. It'll be fine. Just pull forward." "I can't. I'm a worker and need to respect the rules." "Fuck you, bitch. It's cold as fuck." And then he speeds off and I think that's the end. Well, I got to work Monday and I'm standing by the elevator. And this man turns around and I realize it's the EG. "You're the stupid bitch that wouldn't let me park. I don't like you. That was so annoying." The elevator dings and he gets on. "Don't follow me. I don't like you." Then he flips me off while the door's closed. I told the property manager and nothing has been done to my car, which I was worried about because it's a very recognizable color and model with bumper stickers. Hope you enjoy, and I hope this is the right subreddit. I had to vent a little though because it was super annoying. That guy does sound super annoying. I agree with you. Now, on to the next story, which is our title story. I won a lawsuit against a guy who tried to force me out of business because I broke his local monopoly. I am 26 years old and I decided to open my own business this year. Moving forward in this post, I should point out that I'm from a small town, around 1,000 people, in the rural Midwest. Because of this, everyone has some sort of connection with someone. We went to one of the liquor stores in the closest city, 30-ish minutes away. Small city of 8,000 people. When we were grabbing some alcohol for a party, I was looking at the prices and saw how insane the prices were. For a 6-pack of a local beer, we were charged $15. I was thinking about this and figured that I could probably make bank opening a liquor store. Back in February, I was furious about my cruddy job and thinking how cool it would be to own my own business to a friend. My friend's mom happened to be the president of the local bank. He told me, "Hey, with the pandemic, the bank has been struggling to find customers to give out loans. Right now, the bank's giving out loans for cheap." A couple weeks later, I went in and met with my friend's mom and pitched my idea with the research I had done on alcohol prices, potential demand, and estimated income. I got the loan at a fantastic interest rate. I bought the building, which happened to be the former bank, and hired my dad to help me renovate the building. My dad is a general contractor, and he gave me an excellent quote on the materials and labor. After working everything out with the distributors, getting the proper licenses, and getting my paperwork I needed for the government, I was ready to open my liquor store in May. I had started taking out ads in a local newspaper advertising my store and my prices. When I was in talks with my distributors, I learned, even with inflation and everything else, the liquor stores in this city had like an 80% markup. I talked to a local business owner and he suggested that I have around a 35% to 40% markup. Because of this, I was significantly cheaper than the closest liquor store and had a much wider selection than the gas stations and small local stores nearby. My hometown is near a national forest. As such, we have a ton of people who come up for weekends for recreational activities year-round. My first week, the week before Memorial Weekend after opening, I had made a $4,000 profit. It was great being my own boss. If someone was rude to me or my girlfriend, "Oh, I'm so sorry, you can do your business elsewhere." If someone tells my girlfriend, "Go back to China, you chink bitch," they can pay me 15% more at the register. Did the gang and I run out of alcohol? Time to grab my keys. Not car keys, the store keys. My apartment is like 2 blocks away and go to the store. That's not to say it wasn't difficult running my own business, especially that my only employee was my girlfriend, and we were both working 6 or 7 to 12 hours a day, a week. I was both manager, accountant, and cashier, but frick, it's so much nicer knowing I can tell someone to pound sand for being a prick. Couple weeks after Memorial Day, some old guys walked into my stores a couple minutes after I opened. He seemed friendly enough, but eventually he offered to buy my store. I'm not looking to say the amount, but it wouldn't have even covered my principal on the loan. I rejected the proposal outright and refused to negotiate the sum higher. He walked out of my store saying, "Well, you'll be sorry you rejected that offer." The next month, a guy walked into my store and asked if I was the owner. After saying yes, I was informed that my business was being sued by this random guy I never heard of for libel. After he left, I was freaking out, and I decided that I was going to close early. When I got home, I googled the guy, and soon saw a picture of the guy that was trying to buy my store. Turns out that this is the guy who owns both the liquor stores in the nearby city. It also just so happens that he's on the city council. With a little bit of further digging, I learned that this city has an ordinance that reads, "Any business institution that does not fulfill the definition of a restaurant, tavern, or liquor dispensary will be excluded from obtaining a license for the sale of alcohol." Later, I discovered that the same guy happens to be the head of the board, which approves liquor licenses. I love small-town corruption. Either way, I had a major issue. My maternal uncle happens to be a lawyer in a neighboring state. I decided to call him and try to get some legal advice. I talked to him and read the documents that I had been handed or served over the phone, and the research I had done. After receiving all of the information I had read off, I was expecting to get some sort of advice. But instead I heard, "Hang on, I gotta make a call." And he hung up. I'm freaking out. I was actually about to post my first post to r/legal advice. I'll be honest, I just wanted someone to tell me it was going to be okay, and I didn't need to crawl to this guy on my hands and knees. As I was writing the title, my uncle called back. "Hey, OP, I just got off the phone with my partner. He agreed that we can take on your case pro bono. If you'd like to accept, we can discuss at my office tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And this is how I learned that my uncle is on the bar in 3 states. So we meet and we discuss the case. It turns out that the guy filed the libel suit against my business based on the ads I took out in the local newspaper. He claimed that my ads were targeted to damage his and his business's reputation. There were a few other things that I had no idea what was being referenced, but my uncle assured me that we would win this case no problem. 3 weeks later, the case is dismissed, but afterwards my uncle says, "People like that piece of garbage work will try to file another suit against you. If that happens, call me, and I promise I will help." The next day I get served again. But this time I am the defendant, not the store, me. I swear to God, I look at the documentation, and the only thing that changed was instead of my business's name, mine is listed as the defendant. Same thing happens, 4 weeks later, the case is dismissed. Over the next 3 months, I was sued just as many times. Before the 5th case hearing, we had a settlement meeting. My uncle, the judge, and the guy suing me, his lawyer, and a bailiff and I were sitting in a room. The judge says, "You two have been in court 4 times already. Is there any way we could come to an agreement that you'll stop this cycle of faulty litigation?" The guy's lawyer says they have an offer and hand it to my uncle, who then hands it to me. It essentially read that he'll stop all litigation if I sell my business for about 30% of the remaining loan principal. I outright rejected the offer and made a counteroffer. I said, "If you drop this case, I won't sue your ass for harassment." He busts out laughing. "Sue me? With what money? The legal fees alone ought to have drained you. You should be happy I chose to extend this offer and not sue your ass into bankruptcy and buy that shithole from the bank when they foreclose on your dumb ass." The judge, the bailiff, and the guy's own lawyer were all looking at him aghast for saying the silent part out loud about the real reason I was getting sued. My uncle straight out said to him, "Oh, I'm sorry, apparently you were never told. I have taken all of my nephew's cases pro bono. The only money he has spent on your litigations is gas. And bluntly, sir, I think your outburst has just insured a suit against you." After that, we just left, and I was then informed a few days later that the litigation was dropped. Right now, my uncle and I are talking about future suit against this guy. I want to sue the guy for a very high amount and try to get press attention on the guy and his sketchy actions. Although my uncle warned me that we'll need to be careful, because if we set the damages too high, it'll look like we're just being vindictive. This suit won't be pro bono, but after getting sued 5 times for free essentially, I'm not going to complain. Looking back on this, I'm so thankful that my friends and family supported me the entire way, especially my uncle. Without my uncle, I would have absolutely lost my business. But wait, there's an update! Won another lawsuit against the guy who tried to force me out of business because I broke his local monopoly. Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. This is a follow-up to a post I made last year. I'll link it at the bottom, and that's where we read that if you're interested. But the TLDR. Last year I opened a liquor store with my girlfriend, now fiancé, in my hometown. The nearby city had a few liquor stores run by a city councilman who controls who gets liquor licenses in said city. With me being 40 minutes away, he was losing business and offered to buy my store. I refused, and instead he tried to sue me for libel. He attempted this for around half a year and continued to sue me, my business, or anything else he could get until it was thrown out with contempt. Fortunately, I was able to get my lawyer to take the case pro bono, so I didn't get buried in legal fees like the guy intended. My lawyer and I then began to file the suit against the guy, and that's where we left off a while ago. As of now, the case is over and I can talk about it. So, to first explain why I didn't post any updates previously, when I filed the lawsuit, my lawyer told me not to post anything about it online. I don't think this had anything to do with my original post, but what he told me was if the opposing counsel found a post and was able to link it back to me, they could argue that I was only filing a suit to gain online clout. But now the court case is over, so I can now talk about it to you guys. We filed the complaint about a month after the last case against me was dismissed. What we filed for was multiple accounts of malicious misuse of due process. After filing the complaint, we needed to serve the papers to the guy, which someone, I don't know who, must have told him, because he dodged getting served for multiple weeks. The only reason the process servers was able to serve him was because there was a meeting to approve the transfer of a liquor license between 2 businessmen in the city. Ironic. He and his lawyers answered the complaint and said, Literally everything in the complaint and the summons was a deliberate misrepresentation of the facts. Literally none of his suits filed against me were in no way malicious. But given that the only thing that changed between most of the suits was the name defendant, kind of disproves that. He then went on to say that his current suit is simply a move by me to get revenge on him for trying to protect his business. Pretty much the entire answering was him saying, "No, you." After that, we moved into discovery, which I will talk about in a minute. Through the discovery process, there were a couple motions for dismissal by the defendant's counsel. The first was just the general. All the facts are wrong, and this is a lawsuit filed in bad faith, blah blah blah. This was immediately thrown out by the judge because of the four suits filed back to back, with only the defendant being changed, indicates that this was potentially a malicious lawsuit. The second motion was that these were malicious because the defendants were different. Effectively, the argument was that if it's the same defendant, then it would have been a malicious suit. But because the defendant kept getting changed from suit to suit, that means there was a legitimate complaint that they were trying to get solved, which technically would be legal, and I would have no standing. However, the judge acknowledged that while the argument is legally sound, if you simply look at the wording of the law, it completely violates the spirit that it was written in, and the actions of the defendant only serve to confirm that the previous lawsuits were filed in bad faith. So the motion was tossed out in court. Later during discovery, the defendant filed for a change in venue. Seems how we filed by my local court. They argue that the local jury would be biased toward me. This was dismissed because they forgot to ask for a jury trial. We were perfectly fine with proceeding with the bench trial, so we didn't ask for a jury. The judge decided then that because they didn't request a jury, a change in venue would not offer any significant change in the trial. They used that decision, and some history I have with the same judge, to appeal the state court dismissing of the case. They refused. So back to discovery. The whole process was extremely slow, and we were actually still in the middle of discovery when we decided to settle. We received multiple statement offers up to that point and rejected all of them. But at the end of November, the defendant decided to fire the manager of one of his businesses. The former manager then decided to turn over some text messages to the court. You see, we requested all communications about the malicious filings from last year that the defendant had made. That included text messages that showed neither counsel nor the defendant did the proper diligence to comply with discovery. The defense was able to get that text removed from evidence. While the text may not have been able to be used as evidence, if we have proceeded to trial, you can't erase that you hid evidence from the judge's memory, and they don't tend to take that well. With this coming to light, and the chicanery that the defendant had been pulling, the judge was just over it at this point. Our lawyers had to meet with the judge at the very beginning of this month, December, where the defense's counsel was reprimanded. After this, the defendant offered a real big settlement. After my fiancé and I discussed it, we decided to accept the offer. Our wedding is getting really close, and frankly, we don't want to deal with court stuff anymore. The whole trial process was still months away, and there wasn't any guarantee that we would have gotten any more money. Unfortunately, it's not the nuclear revenge that me and my fiancé, and probably you, were hoping for. Although the settlement, after I settled the contingency pay for my lawyer, did repay the remainder of my loan, and we will still have a nice chunk of money left over. That's wonderful, OP. And to people who would sue for stupid reasons, maliciously,
go sit on a bird crap covered bench, you stick of an ass.
Anyway, on to the last story of the day. Relative tries to steal from dead siblings' kids. If you like a good screw around and finding out, you'll love this story. The cast of characters are Dad, Uncle, and Granddad. A few years ago, Granddad died in a rehab facility as a result of gross negligence. Dad and Uncle opened a lawsuit on behalf of Granddad's estate. It drags on and looks like it's going nowhere. 2 years ago, Dad died a couple months after a cancer diagnosis. It was sudden, and the uncle had promised him and his kids were now his. He'd look out for us. I was the executor of Dad's estate and did the usual business of selling property, closing accounts, and so on. Since Uncle was the executor of Granddad's estate, I asked him if it was still open and what the lawsuit's status was. The uncle said the lawsuit went nowhere and the estate was closed. And this is where I made a mistake. I took him at his word. Dad's estate was settled and closed last winter. My siblings and I split everything according to the will, and life continued. In April, Uncle called me to tell me that he wanted to give my siblings and me a small amount of money. The lawsuit on behalf of Granddad was paying out, and the uncle wanted to give us $10,000 to split. He then told me my dad's estate needed to be reopened to claim it. There were so many red flags you would think the circus was in town. I played nice, thanked him, and immediately called the courthouse where Granddad and Dad's estate were established. The clerk told me that not only was Granddad's estate still open, but there was also a large bond on a sum of money recently placed. Did I want the name of the lawyer on file? Yes, I did. I called the lawyer, and the receptionist exclaimed that they were trying to find my contact info. The lawyer gets on the line, and as one of the beneficiaries, he's able to fill me in on everything. Right after Dad was diagnosed, the lawsuit for Granddad was settled. Dad died without knowing the rehab admitted to their part in causing his father's death, and paid out a settlement. The money sat in limbo for 18 months, through the funeral and the sale of properties. The first business day after Dad's estate closed, the uncle petitioned for the release of funds as the sole beneficiary. The estate lawyer discovered that Uncle wasn't the sole beneficiary, and requested my contact info, which the uncle claimed he did not have. The lawyer tells him that my siblings and I were still his beneficiaries, even though Dad's estate closed. We were entitled to Dad's share, and this is when the uncle called me with this tale of wanting to gift us a small amount. The total sum of the lawsuit after taxes and a lawyer's fees was around $150,000. Since Dad and the uncle were sole beneficiaries of Granddad's estate, they would each get half. Guys, I was furious. I called my siblings and we agreed to play it cool. The lawyer for Granddad's estate knew Uncle was being shady and never intended to split the money, so he refused to release the funds to Granddad's estate. The checks would go to Uncle and Dad's estate directly. I decided to bide my time with Uncle and not reveal the extent of what I knew. 2 more months go by, the estate is reopened, and the bank account is established, and this is when Uncle finds out through the lawyer that the funds would not be given to Uncle to disperse, but would go directly to the beneficiaries. The uncle calls me spitting mad, saying he did all the legwork of getting the lawsuit done and deserved payment. He felt giving us $10,000 was fair. I told him the courts had a system for that sort of thing, and he would get his hours and time through the lawyers. The uncle went into a rant that Dad owed him money, and that Uncle would bill us for so many hours we would get less than $10,000 if we didn't agree to the $10,000. I told him to try it, and oh boy, Uncle did try. Granddad's estate lawyer wouldn't say how many versions of the application he rejected before they arrived at an acceptable rate the judge would agree to. The uncle wanted us to pay for a grave plot since Dad died first and took the last plot in the family graveyard. He wanted repayment for all sorts of things that had nothing to do with Granddad's estate. The poor estate lawyer had to try and beat estate laws and inheritance into Uncle's head, but the uncle was determined to take both his share and Dad's.
"I'm the executor, they don't deserve a thing."
My siblings and I accepted the first reasonable rate and walked away with half the remaining balance. The uncle never realized the sum would come off the top, not deducted from Dad's share alone. Despite the paper trail of deception he left, he still feels he's the victim and we stole from him. The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. It comes from friends and all of your loved ones. That's the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts below, and hit that notification bell. I will see you all next time. Hasta la pasta.